The Hard Talk with Jakim Show.
The Hard Talk with Jakim Show.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions of DIN Media Studios. Any questions or concerns about what is said should be directed to the show host or producers. Thank you and enjoy. Peace and blessings. This is Jakim from the Hard Talk with Jakim Show. Can't get enough of the Hard Talk with Jakim Show? You can email us at btom6164@gmail.com. That's bthomp6164@gmail.com. Peace.
Hey, peace and blessings, all y'all. Listen, I'm going to do the disclaimers for fair use a little bit later on, but we've got an action-packed hour for you tonight. And listen, we got a topic that has gone crazy on the internet here in Delaware. I'm sure it was doing it in New Jersey. Big shout out to Georgia. Big shout out to y'all. I got your emails. I've got two of the great guests. We got another great guest that's coming on at 7:30. She'll be coming on live from Philadelphia. But before we get to this, I've got to say two things, y'all. One, the Supreme Court is crazy. We're going to leave it at that. And second, accountability is now here to stay. Thank you for joining the Hard Talk with Jakim Show. Listen, I got two great guests on you, Mr. James Taylor and Sister and Miss Boss, Donyale Hall, my other co-host. We are all her, and she's live from Dover, if I'm right, That's right. So we've got a hot topic for you tonight. I'm not going to play a lot of videos because we're going to get to it. I've got over 100 emails, and about 7 of them was death threats. So, but I got 100 emails about this topic of our Delaware schools. Now, I put this thing out, and here we go, prophets, and I'll bring our guest on. What happened was I had a question about Delaware schools and about the public schools, private schools, vouchers, charter schools, or whatever you want to call it. And Councilwoman Yolanda McCoy of Wilmington took my question, put it on her particular thread, and I thank her for it, and it started blowing up with everybody's ideas. So what did I do? I called some people that are knowledgeable about school and education here in Delaware. First, I want to welcome Mr. James Taylor. Big shout outs to you, brother. And second, I want to welcome our beautiful sister, Donyale Hall. And I'm going to take it, and you know I got to do the ladies first, so I'm going to let Donyale say something first. Donyale, we've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to get into. When I put that out, it wasn't but a couple of days later, the E.Casey Foundation said that Delaware ranked 45 out of the 50 states. What do you say about that?
Well, you know my fun fact, Jakim. I've got 10 beautiful children, so I have much skin in the game. I love that expression James just had. If people don't remember me for anything else, they remember me for my fun fact. So I've got 8 adult children now and 2 that are still full-time in the house. And those 2 are going into the 7th and the 9th grade. And probably after COVID, I think we started to take stock and inventory as to where we were at academically with our kids. I think that was, a starting point where people were really looking and paying attention because there were so many people in a virtual environment that really got left behind. So, at one point we talked about no child left behind. All children got left behind, it seemed like, except for those who were able to afford private schools and could keep their kids in school. I think they maybe stayed out for about a month until they could get whatever protocols in place, but they went back seamlessly. And those kids are on track, on target. It's the rest of us that, are suffering from that. And so we already had places where we definitely needed fixes in the education system. And so you're spot on with us in the bottom 5 in the nation. The more startling statistic is that when you look at the 8th grade level here in the state of Delaware, only 40% of our 8th graders are on reading level. 30% of our children are on math level. And if you are Black or brown, some places are in the single digits for those kids. And so we have an education crisis in the state of Delaware, and I am excited to talk about this because you know what my story is. When you're 18, you've got to either spread your wings to fly to somebody's college, or you got to get to McDonald's, but you got to do something because you got to get out of my wallet.
There you go. Listen, thank you for that was great. Now, James, I'm going to give you the same question. We were, like I said, the E.Casey. Now, I don't know this foundation, but we have seen in the last 10 to 15 years, we have been ranked at the bottom on most people's list. What do you think about the educational system right here in Delaware?
So, we get a lot of love in terms of like educational history and lore because Brown versus the Board was launched out of Delaware, right? Two of the lawsuits that formed that sweep of precedents were initiated here. But I'm gonna say something that's probably gonna give you a little bit of hot water. I think that the education system's been bad for Black kids since long before COVID. I came up over on the west side of Wilmington that Yolanda McCoy represents in J Street's camp. And like we were talking about before we got on air, he had to sue Red Clay School District over us to make them behave themselves. And right now they're doing the same thing to Hispanic kids that they were doing to Black kids 20, 25 years ago. So if your skin was the wrong color, the public schools have always been failing you. The question is, why are we just now talking about it? Whose kids are flunking that's making it a relevant conversation all of a sudden? So I've been talking to folks in the city. I've been proposing some alternatives that are upsetting virtue signaling liberals a great deal in my party. People like to talk about how they love public schools and this, that, and the third. And I'd say all the time, the only thing I'm doctrinaire about is actually educating the kids. I don't quite care how we do it.
Word, speak it.
If you get it in the community center after school, if you get it in a Saturday school in the way some of our Jewish brothers and sisters have done with their kids.
Or library.
If you get it in the library, I actually sat down with the WLC's Laura Burgos, the director of that organization, and shared with her my idea of having them write up a model curriculum that they post online. That so the kids that have these ThinkPads can access them and their parents can actually monitor what it is that they're learning and keep them on track. So I don't care how we do it. We just need to get it done, even if that means offending some of our so-called friends.
Yes. And well spoken, brother. And let me just say this. Again, you're watching the Hard Talk with Jakim show, and I want you to understand we are in an education crisis. I'm going to take it from Sister Donyale. We are in an educational crisis here. Now, let me just say, I'm going to piggyback to you, Donyale, on something that James said. I want y'all to understand that this Black man is always about the Black community. I want y'all to understand that. But I say that by building the Black community up, you build up all of America. Now, here's the deal. Our children in America are so far behind the Asian child, the Korean child, the Japanese child in education, and not only education, but social skills. We ain't even gonna go with the social skills, but we're so far behind. I don't know if there's one big fix, and we all know throwing money at it isn't the solution if you don't have the right people in leadership. Do you agree with that, Donyale?
I absolutely agree with it. And one of the things that we didn't talk about was the education dollar. And so for us being in the top 10 spending for education per child, to be in the bottom 10, bottom 5, even worse, is not a clear return on our investment here in the state of Delaware. I know that you absolutely hit it spot on when you said there's no one size fits all fix for this. Depending on where you are in the state of Delaware, things and resources can be more scarce. And we have to not hold up a measuring stick that holds all schools in the same place, because there are different things that are necessary and needed. And sometimes whatever, the funding formula is, it doesn't work. You can't judge all of these different schools by that particular measuring stick. So, I'm gonna go out there and also say that, I don't go along to get along with anything. And you're absolutely right that a rising tide lifts all boats. So, it didn't become a problem until it started affecting other communities. And we've seen that as an epidemic across the nation with all areas that are concerning. So it might be drugs today, it might be the education system tomorrow, but when it starts affecting the affluent communities, then it's a problem. You're absolutely right, James. It has been a problem for Black and brown children long before this particular wave of instances that we started actually looking after COVID. So I do believe that the conversation has to be comprehensive when it comes to what we can offer our parents. But I think that the bottom line entry point is that we have to equip families with what they need for their particular situation and their circumstance to address the education shortcoming for their child.
Yes, and listen, Donyale, I agree with you 100%, because we're going to hit a couple of targets that both conservatives are not going to like and the progressives are not going to like, because it's about educating the people and it's about educating our children. And like James said, I don't really have a standing order that I care about a building. I don't care that this was your grandfather went to this building, your great-grand. I want education for the children. Now, I have to say this, and I would be remiss, and one of the guys sent me this email. He says, in the last 15 years, we've had charter schools fail in the state of Delaware that it was mind-boggling. In fact, most of the charter schools that have failed, open up and then failed, was a legitimate money grab. These people were not. So charter schools ain't the answer either if you're just thinking charter school and voucher and private school. We need to do something with private, and we need to do something in our public education. What do you say about that, James?
So I would actually, I want to lift up what Mrs. Hall just said. You have to make the solution fit the actual problem, right? And for that, we go back to the principles, just the bare fundamentals. Things have to be culturally relevant. And where we've seen success, that's been the case. Parents are paying, top dollar to make sure that their kids get a culturally relevant education with respect to their socioeconomic status. I got an ex-girlfriend that went to Groton Academy. And that's literally what they're doing. They just built a system that works for what it is that they are and that they're trying to perpetuate. And what we've not seen is Black and brown people be able to do the same thing. We had to advocate this year.
No, well, let me give you a little pushback. Dr. Umar has been doing a Wilmington boys' school for the umpteenth year, and it still hasn't put together. And I remember other people, in fact, the Umar school that he took over was from a older person that was from my area, Donyale. That school, why did it fail? It was a Black school. It was a school that was predominantly educators that of African-American ancestry. Why did it fail? Because I believe a lot of them failed because of money grabs. And the money grab is not only in the public schools, the money grab is also in the private schools.
So the fact that I'm just now hearing that he actually got one of his schools off the ground.
No, he didn't get it off the ground.
That's my point.
He didn't get it off the ground. But
that's my point.
Think about the school in which he supposedly bought, was a Black school that was off the ground.
Moyer
Academy. Moyer Academy.
Yeah, well, see, I know people that went to Moyer, and that's that's sort of the issue. You have people from our own community that are trying to push somebody else's culture with black skin. That wasn't really culturally relevant, and that's why it failed. So we need something that actually is organic from us. And I was about to say, you know, we had to advocate in Red Clay for them not to take those children's English language learning program, where kids were going in and learning in Spanish.
Right.
You know, and like this is what I mean when I say culturally relevant. These kids, sometimes they're the only English speakers in their house. They have to learn in both languages or they're gonna fall behind.
Well, let me just give you, and I'm gonna give you this to Donyale. And James, I'm gonna follow up on this. So a couple of the emails that I got was that the reason why our schools are so bad, and you know, these are by the racist punks that's out there, is because of DEI and CRT and all of this critical race thinking. That's the reason why. And we all know, all of us that are cognizant and not morons, we all know that's not the case. We know that that's the talking point that you want to do. I'm gonna give you this question. Last month, Donyale, and I'm gonna bring it real. Last month we had school board elections here in Delaware, and I'm looking at the school board election for my district, which is the Colonial School District. And out of the school board elections, out of the thousands of people who live in our district, Colonial School District, we had 362 people vote in the school board election. Now I'm going to call out one particular community and one particular center, and that is Kingswood Community Center. At Kingswood Community Center on May 14th, 2 people voted. Now, we can't get nowhere if 2 people voted at Kingswood Community Center. What do you say about that, Donyale?
It goes back to the core values of the family. And
Yes.
I say that with all wholeheartedness because I'm 54 years old. I'll be 55 in December. When I grew up, we sat down and we had a meal together. We talked about relevant things to our community. My parents were involved and engaged. And I can tell you that my father left quite a legacy over in the Caesar Rodney School District down here in Dover, where I'm from. I'm a CR grad. But my dad was the quintessential hellraiser. And he would go in there and turn the school upside down, inside out, and backwards to fight for us.
So let me say this. I bet you your dad voted in every school board election.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And even before I knew how to vote, he told me when I got to be 18, even if I wasn't actively engaged in politics, who was best serving our interests. And he taught me to be strategic with my ballot. And that's another point. You know, we have households right now that are consumed with the economics of just living. They're struggling to keep a roof over their head. They're struggling to get back and forth and keep gas in their car, pay their bills, and put clothes on the backs of their children and food on the table. I know every time I go to the grocery store, I can feel how that is strangulating our families. And so, you know, we have this situation now where people are not aware of what's going on politically because they're so distracted by all of the things that they have to do every day. And I'm not making any excuses for it,
right.
Justin, but the point of the matter is that we don't have any skin in the game when it comes to politics, because just like financial literacy, you have to be taught those things to be able to employ them and use them. And the vote is just as powerful as your wallet. And even more so because, you know, the business of politics is about who gets what and how much. So when it comes down to school board elections, that's telling, because clearly
they don't care
anything.
Well, hold on. And you're right. And I'm going to go to you, James. But I do have a bunch of comments that just came in. Wow. Paul J. Falkowski, I hope I didn't say it right. You know, I'm not using my DJ voice tonight, so, but he says he's a teacher. He says all measures in education are about reading and math. Yes, we agree that reading, math, science should be the focal point for the curriculum. I understand that. We understand that. And let teachers teach, he says in one of his comments. And they're not social workers, food service people, counselors, nurses, and discipline. Now that I'm going to do a pushback on, Paul, and I thank you for your comment. Keep sending them in, man, because that it's important. At least you had a coherent comment and wasn't some dumb stuff. But thank you again, Paul. But let me just get back to James, and then we'll get back to Paul's comment. James, there were two people who voted in the Kingwoods Center for the school board election in Colonial. How can we win doing stuff like that?
So the short answer is that you don't. The more fulsome answer is that Mrs. Hall is right. People are consumed with the daily concerns of just making it through the week, and so I think I've told you before offline about the fights that I've had with the Democratic Party about this. We're not saying anything about the fact that John Carney is inviting Republicans into the primary to pervert our primary, right? But there's an argument about the fact that I want to do this.
Right.
I printed up an explainer on how to use the new absentee ballot. And then I actually printed up the ballot, addressed the envelope, and paid for the postage. And they're like, well, that might be suborning fraud. And I'm like, this is the hill you want to die on? You know what I mean?
Listen,
and so this is...
I agree with you, James, but let me just say this. I'm not giving anybody a pass when all you could do is go to the store, dress little girl up and little Johnny up and put pictures on Facebook and social media and tell me you can't get your butt out there to vote on the school board. I see them all the time. I see it in my own family. In fact, let me just give y'all this. Big shout out to all the people that's watching us in Georgia. My two of my grandkids are upstairs running around crazy. My 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. And one of the things, I'm not talking about them, but too many parents are putting their little girls on social media to look like Queen or Princess this, yet she can't even read grade level. I'm not giving anybody a pass when two people in a district voted for a school board election.
So that's fair, you know what I mean? But at the same time, let's have a fuller conversation about it, because when you switch polling places twice in two elections,
that's fair.
Because you really don't want people to show up and pick the wrong.
That's fair.
The wrong option. You know what I mean? People become disheartened and like they don't participate when you have representation that talks down to you and looks down on you, which is frankly why I'm in the race right now. People aren't gonna think that the system can help them, and that's why I'm in the city advocating more self-help options, because I understand that people don't want to be engaged. I've lived it myself. If I weren't one of the ones that got chosen, I would probably be just like those folks over in Riverside that can't be bothered.
Right. Well, I couldn't. I don't know about my situation, but I would say this: I just couldn't, because all of my life I've voted, and all of my life I paid attention to the school board, even in New York. Let me give you this real quick, Donyale. Mm-hmm. We had another thing that I've talked about is accountability. We're going to get on the governor's accountability very shortly. But one thing I do want to know is that even in the police department or corrections, you can't make change from the bottom up. It has to come from the top down. So when I hear that a superintendent in Dover has resigned because she's having problems in that school district, and I know you know her, so give us a little background on that.
Well, I absolutely love Vi. She is a stellar rock star. That woman is visionary beyond all measure. I have nothing but the deepest admiration and respect. I'm just going to put it all out there. You know, she's my blue and white sister in the Divine Nine. So she's always rocked out. She's always done a lot of powerful things. And I know that, again, the root of all evil is money. And there were some things that were going on with contract negotiations. That woman lives, eats, breathes, and all things school. So when you put that type of time into developing not only just the school itself, but the surrounding community, she has cultivated stakeholders in and around this area in such a way that those alarming statistics that you spouted about there being 2 showing up to vote, the whole community is actively involved in conversations because she has engaged the community. There's actually been outreach to the community as it pertains to education and the problems inside of the schools. And so don't get me wrong, the things that are going on in the Capital School District are not unique to the Capital School District. It's just that there has been a light cast upon it, and it's been in the media a lot lately.
Right.
But we still have those same kind of things. And, you know, to Paul's comment about the teachers not being able to just come in and do their job, which they, you know, were trained to do, which is to teach math or science or social studies or English or whatever their subject is. You know, there is a reality that these kids show up to school every single day with some sort of presenting problem that they can't even actively engage in an academic setting because they're hungry, or they're coming out of a situation where, you know, there's gang violence or drugs or all manner of things that hinders their ability to engage in a curriculum. So to his point, we do have to do some things to expand services to these families to address those underlying issues. And people like Dr. Cade were definitely advocating for those things. And you know, when a school district doesn't appreciate your worth, you understand that.
Now, yeah, you're absolutely right. And he did mention that he's known you for some time now, Paul. So he wanted to say that. Let me go back to James. And James, listen, I appreciate your work, man. I know what you're doing out there. I've seen you out there. You've seen me out there. You know what we do. Being in Newcastle County. Now I want to get to the crux of culpability. Accountability is big with me. You can't do. So one thing I'm going to say, one thing for sure, 2 things for certain. Something is wrong here. Okay, let me repeat that for y'all. One thing for sure, 2 things for certain. Something is wrong here. What do you think of the job that our governor has done in the last 7 years that has brought us to this level? It could be an A, B, and C, D. Since we're talking about school, I have given him a C- in education. I don't know what we could do to have such the highest budget of all time in the state of Delaware, the highest amount of money going to our children, and yet we have these types of results. If this was a business, it would be bankrupt. What do you think, bro?
So I work in unclaimed property. It's funny you touched on the budget, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm under an NDA, so I can't say anything, but I will say this. Send a FOIA request so you can look at the reports that I look at all day.
Oh, my God. Listen.
Money ain't the problem.
Money ain't the problem.
I'm going to answer your question with a question.
Yes, sir.
We didn't just become 45th in the country.
No, we didn't.
These problems didn't just happen. So why would the governor all of a sudden decide that he's going to fix Bancroft School and invest those funds?
Okay, let me answer that question. Because one thing that social media does is that it gets out to places that do not know about Delaware. And when I say this, I'm going to say this, they may not like what I do. They may not want me to do what I do, but they damn sure do watch what I do. And now I'm going to tell you that. Let me just say this. The money that he spent on education, like Sister said, the ROI, the juice ain't worth the squeeze. I'm telling you now.
Let me jump in.
Yes,
Let me jump in there, because the juice is worth the squeeze. If you're a real estate developer.
He said if you're a real estate developer.
If you're a real estate developer.
Say that again.
See, the reality of the matter is he and Przicki have been working together and they built all this stuff up here that nobody's living in. And so now the selling point goes back again to the basics. You always go back to the basics. If you can't get somebody to move somewhere, what do? You tell them that there's a good school nearby.
Yep.
So they told Eastside that it's for our babies, but it's not for our babies. It's for the folks that they hope come and live in these condos / apartments.
Yep.
Rather, these apartments that are priced like condos. So that's the real play.
Yeah.
And these are the things that people have to ask themselves. And like, these are the things, frankly, that if we want people to be engaged politically, we need to be saying to them instead of trying to be friends with other political actors. Because political actors are what? 1% of the vote?
Yes.
The other 99 is the folks on the street who aren't being served and aren't being told the truth, frankly.
All right. So listen, I agree with you, man. So many of them talk that game, but they don't walk that game. Right now, we're on our 31 minutes, so I'm going to give y'all a chance to get something to drink, and we're going to be right back with Donyale. I've got a good question for you, Donyale, and we'll be right back with the Hard Talk with Jakim show. Check this out from the great KRS-One.
Remember this. If older people don't listen to younger people, they become slow amongst older people. When younger people don't listen to older people, they become slower amongst younger people. If young people would listen to older people, they move faster amongst younger people because you got advanced knowledge.
Right.
And when older people listen to younger people, we move faster in the older world because you got new knowledge.
They do not want your children to be educated. They do not want you to think too much. That is why our country and our world has become so proliferated with entertainments, mass media, game shows, television shows, amusement parks, drugs, alcohol, and every kind of entertainment to keep the human mind entertained so that you don't get in the way of important people by doing too much thinking. You had better wake up and understand that there are people who are guiding your life and you don't even know it.
Ancestor Toni Morrison told us in 1975 that racism is not just a fraud, but a masterful distraction. They say that Black people have no culture, are not civilized. We spend all this time trying to prove that we are civilized, prove that we have an ancient culture that dealt in science and mathematics. They treat us with complete disregard for our health and our safety, and we scream to the top of our lungs. Black lives matter. We matter, we matter, we do. It's a masterful distraction that keeps us from doing the real work. She talked about the fact that we have to stop fighting the fever and fight the disease. The disease is power. The point has always been power, and we will continue to lose our power or really maintain none so long as we are distracted and stuck in this cycle of trying to prove our worth. The only people we need to be worthy to are us.
All right, y'all. So we had some great words there. And KRS-One was absolutely right. When you are a young person and you listen to older people, you're able to move faster around young people. And vice versa also happens. When you're an older person and you start listening to young people on some topics, you start moving faster around older people because a lot of them don't know this, don't know that, don't know this, can't get that, you know, all that problem. So he had a good one on there. My question to you, again, this is the Hard Talk with Jakim show. My question, we're talking about education in Delaware. That's right. Let me just push it. Last week, the E.Casey Foundation said that Delaware ranked 45 in the nation on education. Out of 50, 45. I mean, we're down there with Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, and all of those southern states, yet we're in the Northeast and we border New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. There's something wrong here. I'm going to say it one more time. There's something wrong here. And I'm going to put culpability and accountability right where it's supposed to be at. If you have a budget and you also have what we call a board, you appoint people to be in the Department of Education. You appoint people to oversee things. If you sit in the seat, you got to get the heat. That's how I feel about it. What do you feel about that, Donyale?
I agree 100%. Now, I just was able to figure out how James had his little caption under there so I could become official too.
There you go.
Filed today, so I'm running at the federal level for the House of Representatives. Yes, yes, yes. And so when you're talking about accountability, I've been kind of looking at this from a couple of different vantage points. You have layers of accountability.
Yes.
So from within the state's purview, there's accountability that can be had there within the Department of Education. And, you know, just to enlighten some folks, you know, their school board elections in the public education system, they happen through an election process. The interesting thing with charters who still fall under public schools, their board of directors is appointed.
Yes.
So there's a difference. And I learned that little caveat because I had an issue with a charter school that my children were in. And, I'm not going to point no fingers, but, a smart school leader would pack that board with people who would always, vote with their side of things. And so sometimes there's not always fairness in play. And I use my own personal experience, and those folks know who they are. And I'm not going to call them out by name, but they know I don't have a problem telling them to their face as I've already done about my malaise with what's going on. But, we have to have a process, and it's critical that parents are waging war like my father did. So we've got to find ways of going out in those communities where they're not participating in school board elections and engaging them. I mean, we could do a pop-up basketball event. We could do all kinds of things.
Entertainment,
why can't we go in with the same type of energy, where it relates to our children? Our children are our next generation. And I don't know about you, but I'm not getting any younger. And, these kids that are growing up right now and coming out of our school, not career or college ready, they're eventually the people who are going to have to take care of us. They're our future leaders, and we need to invest some resources in them. And so that accountability from the national standpoint comes through Title I funds. And so if we handled our business where we had an accountability reporting system that requires you to stay in compliance to get those federal dollars, hello.
That would help.
That's
would help.
A no-brainer, right? But again, leadership is key, because how many of these politicians do you hear saying those kinds of things? That requires
no, they don't. And let me just, and not to cut you off, but no, they're not going to say those things because they're trying to get elected and they're trying to maintain a job that they aren't good at any doggone way. We have our people down in Dover right now doing the budget and doing all of that stuff down there, and it's ridiculous. James, I got a question for you, and this one came from a young lady named Jenna. When we put it out there, she said, no public dollars, no public services. You don't get to deduct your cost of your car from your taxes because you choose not to take the bus. In other words, she was trying to make the analogy that we shouldn't use public dollars for charter schools or voucher situations. What do you think about that? Oh,
so I'm trying to. I had to catch myself.
well, go ahead. You know,
because
the voucher system.
One of my favorite books is called When Affirmative Action Was White. And I think that's apropos here, because what have public schools been but charter schools for white kids this whole time?
Yes, I agree.
So now you got beef with the fact that a fraction of the money that goes to these schools that are failing black kids might go to a school that might help a black kid. Like, stop the nonsense. Like, well, that's my response. That's my response. Stop the nonsense. The same way that Mrs. Hall just spoke about, you know, people stacking school boards with their allies. We're seeing that happen in one of the worst performing public school districts, and it happens to be in my district, Christina School. You got city state representatives in Newark, their children, with the exception of one, I believe, wouldn't send their children to this failing school, wouldn't send their kid to the feeder school in that school district, you know, right. trying to stage a coup on the school board, you know, where like the school board president is black. But God forbid parents that are trapped in that district send their kids to a charter. Stop the foolishness. Like,
I agree with you. I agree with you, James, and I gotta cut you off because I'm gonna stay with you on this one before I get back to Donyale. So here we go again. People are saying whether they say you shouldn't have the public school, but Yolanda McCoy put in her answer to my question, do you believe public dollars should go to public schools only? Yes or no? Her answer was, my answer is this is an interesting question. Yes, public dollars should go to public schools, but because my son already attends a private school, I should be permitted to use the tuition and as a tax deduction. What do you think about that?
Are you asking me or James?
No, I'm asking James, and then I'll come back to you, Donyale.
Oh, see, so I'm an old school Democrat, but I was raised a Republican. I mean, I was raised a conservative black man, and like, we're conservative in the traditional sense. We have to conserve what we get because we don't get a lot. Ergo, yes, I'm gonna pay these taxes because I use public services like everybody else. But if the public service ain't working for me, what am I paying for it for? Let me write that up. I need that back. Now, yes. if you want to make it worth my while, then we can talk about you continue to take it from me. If not,
now I agree with what Yolanda McCoy, and big shout out to Yolanda. I think you're watching. I agree with her that if you're sending your child to a private school and you're paying public taxes, why not have it tax deductible? Now, this one I'm going to go to Donyale. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. And that's that multi-tiered strategy that I was talking about, where we don't have one size fits all. And that's so right. In that particular instance, we should be able to create things like other states across the nation where you have these spending accounts that you can put for education dollars, and you can use those things. We can incentivize businesses that would be able to donate and bring dollars into a situation where a child doesn't want to stay in that public school system that's failing and wants to be able to go, and you get business write-offs. There's a whole myriad of things that we can do to make this a workable situation. And you know, I'm of the mindset that competition for those dollars will help increase the proficiencies of these schools, because if they start thinking I'm going to lose my students if I don't get my stuff right,
I agree.
That's incentive to get yourself together. So don't, you know, my thing is we can hit this from a lot of different aspects where we can help those children that are already in a public a school system that want an escape to go to get a better education. We can offer a mechanism to do that. We can definitely help those families who have already invested heavily in their children's education to be able to see a tax break on it. We can even incentivize the private sector and the businesses to put some money into this, because at the end of the day, if you have a strong economic development plan for the state, You want education to be a staple because, to James' point earlier, these places that are standing empty, that have been developed, people want to know that they're getting a good education.
Yes.
We can't attract businesses. We can't attract manufacturing. We can't, Delaware is one of those states that incentivizes being incorporated in Delaware because of the tax incentives and breaks. But a lot of people don't make Delaware their home for their business because our education system is so poor performing.
Well, yes.
Who's going to bring their business here to have their employees come, and their kids are going to not be educated properly. So,
let me just say, and the only pushback I have there, you're right about that. But I think a lot of people don't live in Delaware because not only the school system, and I think that's a big part of it, but I think they don't live in Delaware right now because they're able to do more stuff and know that
definitely
Delaware is a polluter state, especially in Black and brown communities, and they don't want to be in that polluter state. I'm going to tell you, I know we're talking about public education, but this part of the environmental justice piece is another reason that I've heard a lot of people, they already know what we do.
I totally get it, but I just wanted to put that out there because there are a lot of people, big business won't come here, and we've lost bidding opportunities because they look around and they see that our schools are performing so poorly and they don't want to come here. So that's definitely a factor.
You're right. I agree with you. You can chime in, James.
It's a double whammy, right? Because I've had to address this work in the state government with my superiors. From an equity standpoint, there's the point that if you move here or you bring people with like advanced degrees here, they want their kids to remain competitive. And the only way they're competitive is if there's a school their kids applying to post-secondary that has what they call a holistic review. And they'll look at things like geographic diversity. But if you're trying to hire, you have to hire basically where you are. And if people aren't educated because the school system's been trashed for 30, 40, 50 years, then who are you hiring? You're not going to be able to compete with your competitors.
Listen, Asia T. Smith said those are facts. I think she was talking about your comment, Donyale, and definitely James and what we put out there. Big shout out to you, Asia. We got nothing but love for you. But let me just say this again. Before I take this next break, one of the things about our school system that always irked me when my son was going here, both my son and my daughter graduated from some type of form. One of my daughters graduated from some type of form here. One of them graduated from Colonial School District from definitely William Penn. Yeah, big shout out to you, Rome. And the other one graduated from Del State University. Here's my bit, and I'm glad you talked about secondary, and I'm just going to move it to that. Here's my problem with a lot of people, and I got a bunch of email. Big shout out to all the Deltas who sent me something. All the alumni from Delaware State University who sent me something. There's a bunch of alumni said they can't even get a job at Delaware State University. They don't understand why Delaware State University doesn't hire its own alumni, especially if their own alumni live in Delaware. That's a different story, but it's all part of the same thing. The story that I wanted to go with is the issue that I wanted to go with that I heard from some people is a lot of the charter schools and private schools have teachers in them that do not have nearly half the education as public school teachers, where the public school teachers have masters and all these, and yet these private schools and charter schools are not operating in the same way. Their teachers may only have a bachelor's degree. And that's a problem too. I don't know if you experienced that yourself, Donyale.
I've definitely seen where we don't adequately compensate our teachers, and I think that is what's breeding the fact that we can't keep teachers in some of these schools. And in the Capital School District, as a matter of fact, there were a couple of days and weeks where they had to go completely to a remote, at a 24-hour notice because they didn't have enough teachers in the schools to run the school that day. So, again, when we start looking at the money and you follow the money trail, I lived in the state of South Carolina while I was stationed down there. And we had a school district for the county. So if we were to go to something that looked like that and reduced all these school districts, then we could look at reallocating some of this money. And you made a point earlier that I wanted to jump right on. You know, we're not getting the best bang for our buck because the money is not making it to the classroom and to the kids and the teachers.
The juice ain't worth the squeeze, unless you're a developer.
Turning out these kids, the teachers are digging in their own pockets of their meager paychecks to, give the kids supplies and have what they need inside of the classrooms. That's a shame.
Yeah,
and call it what it is. It's a shame.
It's a shame, and yet I've gotten a lot of emails and comments from public school teachers who talked about how they got master's degree. They some of them were even going for PhDs, and yet they're not being paid. And yet the charter school person that's in there teaching your children may only have a bachelor's degree, maybe not even that, maybe just a high school diploma.
And they're even bringing in like some of these teachers to plug in these gaps, and they are paying those teachers that are coming in to fill in a gap more than they're paying the teachers that have been, teachers for decades inside of some of these schools. That's a slap in the face.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, James. Jump in on that.
So this is why I said I'm not doctrinaire. Like, frankly, if something's broken, you build something that's working. And the reality is our public school system has become so political. You got the teachers union, you got the school board, you got the people behind the school board. Meanwhile, you can go into, let's keep it funky. The community center was the first charter school. That's where you first saw people coming in without the credentials, but who may have been effective. If they weren't, they were out of there.
Grandma's lap was my first charter school.
Exactly. My grandmother was actually a preschool teacher at Hilltop where I went. So, this is why I say I'm not doctrinaire. Like, we need to start looking at models that can be more fluid and flexible, because we do need to start paying these teachers. It's criminal that they're not starting at $65,000. It's criminal.
And yet in the public school system, you're requiring them to have a master's. Wow. And Lord knows we're going to talk about the curriculum, but I'm going to give you one more break before we end this. And listen, there's a lot of comments coming in fast and furious, so I'm going to I'm actually going to hit some of them, and then I'll be right back. But I'm going to give you a break, and we'll be right back with the Hard Talk with Jakim show. Peace.
Haven't you ever noticed why thinkers are hated when they're alive and loved when they're dead? Google Malcolm X articles and read what people were writing about Malcolm X when he was alive. Then Google Martin Luther King articles. Read what black people were writing about Martin Luther King when he was alive. Black people. Google Muhammad Ali. Just go and read what black people said about him when he changed his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali. If you think for yourself, sir, and you lead, and you have the courage to speak your truth, you must expect to be hated and expect to be misunderstood. The only thing people hate more than the truth is the person who speaks it. It's not a black thing, it's a human thing. What did the Europeans do when the first scientists came out and said the world is not flat, it's round? They burnt them. Truths that we accept today.
All right, y'all, I'm back. I had to get something to drink, man. Yes, what we're doing here today on the Hard Talk with Jakim show about the Delaware school system and the failings of the Delaware school system is giving you truths. It's going to be hard. It's hard to hear James tell you this. It's hard to hear Donyale tell you. It's hard to hear me tell you this. But we're telling you this because, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, if we don't get our black brothers and sisters, young men and women, onto this playing field that is so far behind, I say in 1 or 2 decades, they'll be like our ancestors back in slavery with some AI or some robot as a slave master. This is that critical right now. We are in education crisis mode right now, and Delaware, we need to fix this now. So again, we got two great guests here, beautiful guests, James Taylor and Sister Donyale Hall. And I'm going to go to the Sister Hall about this emergency, this education crisis that we have right now. There's one more aspect of it, and you opened up the show with it. You opened up with parenting. Parenting, Lord knows, one of the things that you have seen in school all day long, if you walk into any middle school, elementary school, you're going to see some lady, whether she black or white, or some man going to say, sit down, all doggone day. And that's not learning. That is not learning. You cannot learn in an environment where she has to say, sit down all damn day. We need to get the parents really involved. What do you say about that?
Well, unfortunately, when you engage the parents inside of the school, some parents are not receptive to being approached about their child and
social skills, disciplinary
issues. Ooh. Forget the social skills, because they clearly are deficient in that. But, having had so many children, my oldest will be 35 in October. My youngest is 12, okay? And that older batch of kids, I got complimented when they went to school because they said please and thank you, and they had some home training, okay? This younger batch, it's not that they are not getting that same home training, but there are other social influencers, and the schools sometimes themselves are promoting things that make it hard for us, even as parents that are engaged, to continue parenting our child. So I've had my children come home and say, oh, well, you can't do that. And I said, really? Okay, watch me. You tell who you want to tell, okay? But this is how we're going to do it here. But my point being is that you do have some parents who are engaged and are trying to do their piece of it. And because the system and society has shifted whatever norms that we've had as parents over the decades, some of those controls are not even in our hands. And so sometimes the system has become, and it's not even sometimes, the system has become a huge part of the problem, because they've told us we can't discipline our children. We can't say or do things that as parents we should be able to do to keep them from coming to school and having those behaviors. But then when you need to talk to a parent still needs to be able to be receptive to, Houston, we have a problem. I had a problem recently with one of my children. I was fortunate enough that the school put both parents together and we could work it out. But these schools will lock our kids up and throw away the key for the disciplining problems.
Let me get James in on, and you're absolutely right. I'll I have it for my book, but I have a chapter in my book when we were teaching martial arts, and young parents used to come in and bring their kids and say, my Johnny is not doing this, or he's not doing that, he's not doing this in school, he don't follow things. And soon as we discipline him in the martial arts school, I got parents mad at us. So yes, I understand. I don't understand what you want me to do with him. I don't, because as far as I'm concerned, the gentle parenting don't work. But I would go with James. James, what do you think the responsibilities of the parents are?
So I grew up with with what I like to refer to as Panther parents. You've heard of Asians referred to as tiger moms and things like. I grew up with Panther parents,
right?
And so there was something called Black excellence that died off in the last 10, 15 years. And at the core of Black excellence is really just a respect for our own dignity and a pride in our community. And I think getting back to that is what brings us back around, and doing it in a way that's not necessarily punitive,
right?
And holding people accountable for things that they really didn't have control of. A lot of times these parents aren't much older than their kids, and if they don't know, and they were written off as bad kids and they weren't embraced by a certain generation in our community, not only do they not know, they don't trust the community. So it's hard for them to have pride or love for a community that didn't embrace them. And we need to hold ourselves accountable when it comes to
where
that.
I'm going to.
And so, frankly, you know, the fix is those of us that know standing up and being that much better. You know, I grew up in that same atmosphere. My uncle taught martial arts, and my mom was one of them types. But I had my grandparents there to be like, nah, you let the men have them boys. We got to bring it back, but we need people in the community that are credible. Right now, that's a big gap, and we're not talking about that enough.
You know, I didn't want to get into it because we're up on the 1 hour mark. I just want to go a little bit more, and I want to give you.
I got time.
I want to give you both. Okay, I want to give you both a chance to talk about your candidacy and how people can get in contact with you. But one of the things that I got tired of, and we used to do it for self-defense. We did it for self-defense for women as well, and we used to hear it all the time. But children specifically, whoa, I couldn't get it out. When you said, okay, now your Johnny has to run the mat. He has to get on the mat. And he got to do extra laps because he ain't getting his stuff. And what are you doing later on? Because we also had martial arts, and you had to bring your report card. You had to read. You had to show some math. We had teachers there. I don't play the generation game that this generation is better than that generation, because if I did that, we would lose because we're the ones who created this generation. So we would lose. We would lose. With anybody over 50, 40 years old, you would lose because you are part of the generation that holds most of the wealth. Most of the wealth in this United States is 80% is owned by 65 and older. So if we held the wealth, the kids ain't running away. We're the ones who are doing it. But let me just say this. I will say this. Not everything from back in the day was right, but there were some good examples of doing things. We need to vet people. And thank you, James. We need to vet people. I am so tired. I just heard today that a school teacher down in Southern and Kent County, I believe, she's being arrested because of putting hands on the kids. And again, the kids don't know which way to flow. And I think it's because of our lack of leadership, whether it be public, whether it be in politics, whether it be in the schools. Lack of leadership, lack of vision and focus and direction. What do you say about that? Well, I think we could go to about maybe 110. What do you say about that, Donyale? Our lack of leadership.
I absolutely agree. I love that James brought that point around to our purview, because it all stems to where are our community leaders in this conversation. And for those of us who are out with, our boots on the ground and our sleeves rolled up, we typically need to be the burden bearers. And so, we could go into places like, our faith leaders and have, that conversation where, we could actually have a good touch point. A lot of our Black families are still very heavily invested in the church. And, that's a great resource that I don't think that we utilize. And I think that we depend on government too much to fix our problems, when we have to start having an inner resolve within our communities to fix what's wrong with our communities. We have people who are strong in our community, and just, being able to address it from a cultural standpoint. If we start looking from within and engage these folks that are out here that have something to offer to our youth. A good friend of mine here at Lamar Gunn, he's got the Field of Dreams, and he has hit that sector of the population that the kids are underprivileged, want to play these travel ball sports, can't afford. He's given back to the community by putting some skin in the game out of his own pocket in some instances. And while he has those kids there on that field teaching them sportsmanship, he's also promoting financial literacy and having them do vision boards. I mean, we can actually make a tangible difference where we want to. And I think that it's up to us to incentivize people within our own communities to start being the burden bearer for that.
And again, and before I get to you, James, and to piggyback on the points, yes, we have to incentivize people from our own community, and we got to stop allowing people to think that celebrities and sports people know the hell what they're talking about. They don't. They don't know what the hell. And even some teachers. Paul, you said something about DEI is pandering. Let me just tell you, Paul, you're jaw-jacking right there. There's no DEI has nothing to do with our children having terrible curriculum for all those years. If you want to say it, that they were being told a bunch of lies and had them remembering a bunch of lies to be the truth. There's no way in the world any child should know the name of Christopher Columbus ships and not know the name of the tribes that were here when he came here and landed. So you can leave that DEI pandering nonsense in someplace else. James, let me just say this. The vetting. Again, we got to vet these leaders, these so-called black leadership in our community, because a lot of them aren't black leaders. All they out is for is a bag. And when it comes to our education of our children, that can't be stressed as much critical as it is. What do you say about that, brother?
So I think that's a perfect alley-oop, right? Going back to this concept of black excellence and leadership in our communities, and it starting with the families, it all comes down to the fact that there have to be standards. Clear standards that people can get to and measure themselves by, and that we can use to measure our leaders by. Without standards, there's no integrity. Because if integrity is doing the right thing in the dark, when no one's looking, you need to know what the right thing is in the first place.
Yes.
And so that's something that's gone by the wayside. Education is key, because I can round up a few of the younger cats and run down on the party and get everybody together. But if you're not educated, you're just going to give it back in a generation. And so it's important that we have good curricula. It's important that we have good ethical standards.
That's right.
Your morality is between you and your God, but we need to have good ethical standards for the public square. And these are things that we've gotten away from, and we've gotten away from holding ourselves and each other accountable to those standards. So once we get back to that, we'll be in a good place. Speaking of what Paul said earlier about wanting to teach, the only people in education who get to go in and teach without thinking about anybody else are college professors that teach PhDs. Everybody else is dealing with the whole human being.
That's right.
You're
absolutely right.
Part of being a teacher, I've been in the classroom before. I taught high school music at the Berklee College of Music. And part of education is instilling that character bit. So, the thing to remember, and I like to stress this to people when we talk about education, and I'll end here, is that discipline comes from within a person.
That is
it's
correct.
Not something that you impose on them from the outside. If you want a person to be disciplined, teach them to be integritous themselves and instill that as a value, and you won't worry about discipline issues. When we can start instilling integrity in our students, in our families, and in our community at large, that'll be a hurdle that we don't need to worry about as much.
Yeah, and let me just piggyback on that before we end. Yes, I can teach you what discipline looks like, but I can't give you discipline.
That's right.
Discipline can only be given from yourself. You don't get it from your mama. You don't get it from your brother. You don't get it from the church. You doggone don't get it from the military, because when I was in the military, I saw a lot of undisciplined people. So don't tell me. And you damn sure don't get it from law enforcement and police, because when I was in the
I saw
a lot of undisciplined people. So again, don't give me that, we're going to send you to the Army to get disciplined. No. You can show me what discipline will look like, but discipline no one can give you. So we're gonna end on that note. And listen, Paul, don't take it. Don't be thin-skinned, Paul. When I say, oh my God, we need the DEI, I don't want you to be thin-skinned, but I will push back on you. That's what I'm supposed to do. All right. So let me just say this: we had a great conversation. I hear somebody wanted us to do a part 2 because they couldn't be on this one. They wanted us to do a part 2. Both of y'all are welcome to it. And you know, the other person that was another person that was wanted to be on it, he was going to come up with a whole bunch of numbers and figures and all that stuff. And you know, with the numbers and figures, they become empty after a while when you know you're dealing with human beings. We already know what we got the numbers and the figures for. What we're talking about is the tangibles. We're talking about things that matter. So listen, before we get out of here, I'm going to give, always ladies first, Donyale Hall down in Kent County. And Donyale, how can they join your campaign and how can they get involved with you?
Well, I took the liberty of putting my website underneath of my name there. So right. I'm going to give James a second to catch up so that when people go back and review this on YouTube, they can just snatch it right off of there. But I would love to have people join the fight. There's a lot at stake in 2024 on this ballot. People like James Taylor and Donyale Hall, you can count on every day of the week to bring it to you live, bring it to you real.
That's right.
Just like it is. And I think that being
authentic. And hold on before. And no party, whether Republican or Democrat. There you go. Yeah, keep it going.
You got to vote your values. I hashtag that all the time. You know, you got to do the investigation on your candidates. You got to know what they stand for. You got to vet them. You got to call them out on where they stand on the things that are important to you, and figure out who best represents your voice in government. At the end of the day, government is about representation. We have to elect people who are going to be our voices on the local, statewide, and the federal level. So it's important that you do your homework and understand what people bring to the table.
Thank you. And Brother James Taylor?
So thank you, Mrs. Hall, for the tip there. I don't know why I didn't think about doing the same thing, but my website is down there as well. I can't remember who the quote is attributed to, but the scariest 9 words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
That's right.
To boil my candidacy down, it's a variation on that sentence that's a lot less scary. I'm from the community and I'm here to help.
There you go.
You know, I'm not here to judge anybody. I'm not here to assign blame. I'm just here to get the problem solved. And again, I'm not doctrinaire on how we do it. I don't have religion on this stuff. You know, the closest I get to having religion is saying, you know, too many people fought and died for my rights and my dignity for me not to have either. So as a grown Black man, I'm not going to see you disrespect my women, my children, or my elders, and it go by unremarked upon or unchallenged. And so that's really what this is about. If you're tired of the foolishness on both sides of the aisle, if you're tired of paying all this money in taxes and seeing things not improve, if you're tired of being sold a bill of goods, then, you know, vote for something different come September 10th. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing folks out there on the campaign trail and looking even more so forward to doing the work for them down in Dover come September 11th.
All right, y'all. So listen, unlike Brother James, I am here. I do not minimize anybody's culpability for what is happening to our children. And my mandate is to hold you accountable. I am that person. I will hold you accountable. If you are in the seat, you get the heat. That's how it goes. And Lord knows we're going to do it like that. Listen, it's been a great show. We're going to do a part 2 to it. It's definitely going to get it. I'm sure they're going to get even more comments on YouTube. Remember, you can always get this show 24 hours from now on our YouTube platform, Delaware Info Now, and our new platform, The Hard Talk with Jakim Show on YouTube. Subscribe, like, comment. Well, really, I don't want you to comment because I really don't care what you got to say. But If you got something tangible to say, you can always get us at btomp6164. That's BTHOMP 6164 at gmail.com. Listen, it's been a pleasure with y'all. You know I'm going to have y'all on again. And all I'm saying is vote for the community. And I'm going to leave you with this. Now, I always leave with a great video, and I'm going to leave with the video that I love this week from this African brother about friends. See you on the next slide. Thank you again, Donyale. Thank you, James. Check this out. Why I don't have so many friends.
If you have many friends, you are in trouble. It's not a sign that you are popular. It's a sign that you are careless. Did you hear that? Because your values should naturally edit many people out of your life. If you think you are a celebrity and you have everybody just likes me, it's a sign you are a city without walls. You must have people of values and people of standards.